August 20th was World Mosquito Day. Why do we have a World Mosquito Day, you might ask? We know that each and every species has a specific and important role to play in the ecosystem, and indeed mosquitoes have a positive role as being pollinators, and that's beneficial. However, unlike the typical pollinator you and I often might think about, like bees, birds, butterflies, mosquitoes can play a very harmful role to us. By being a vector or a carrier for diseases such as malaria, yellow fever, West Nile virus, Zika virus, and others, mosquitoes can harm other animals like humans. In fact, some would consider mosquitoes to be the world's deadliest animal. So why do we have a World Mosquito Day? Well, the history of World Mosquito Day is actually pretty interesting. World Mosquito Day was first established in 1897 when the link between mosquitoes and malaria transmission was discovered by Sir Ronald Ross. And this designated day is basically to raise awareness about the threat of malaria and other diseases transmitted by the mosquito. And I know we're in the midst of a devastating pandemic, and who knows how this is going to play out in the next few months or in 2021 and beyond. But isn't it interesting that here we are more than a century after it was discovered that there's a link between mosquito and malaria, that malaria is still a severe public health problem and the leading cause of death and disease in many developing countries. According to a World Malaria Report in 2019, malaria afflicted 228 million people and killed an estimated 400,000 and 500,000 people in 2018 alone, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. Pregnant women and children are the most vulnerable to malaria. The disease malaria is caused by parasites that are transmitted to people through the bites of infected mosquitoes. And we're not talking about all mosquitoes, only certain species of mosquitoes of the Anopheles genus, and only females of those species can transmit malaria. Malaria was eradicated from the United States in 1951. The CDC estimates that there are about 1,500 to 2,000 cases of malaria per year in the United States. The vast majority of these cases in the United States are in travelers and immigrants returning from countries where malaria transmission occurs, mainly from sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. Now let's go back a bit in time and talk about the history of the pesticide DDT, because as you might know, it was widely used decades ago in the US and Europe to fight against malaria, and its use was highly controversial. DDT, or dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethane, was created in 1874 by a German chemist, but at the time wasn't found to be an effective insecticide. And it wasn't until 1939 when its usefulness to attack pests like mosquitoes was discovered by Swiss chemist Paul Mueller. In fact, Mueller won the 1948 Nobel Prize for his discovery of the high efficiency of DDT as a contact poison against several arthropods. And this discovery was right around the time of World War II. So although DDT, being a pesticide, was widely used in agriculture, DDT was also used extensively during World War II. Epidemic typhus has historically occurred during times of war and deprivation. Typhus was spread by the human body lice. Louse-borne typhus was responsible for large epidemics in populations with overcrowded conditions and poor sanitation. Typhus killed thousands of prisoners in the Nazi Germany concentration camps. DDT was used to delouse people who were liberated from the German death camps. The US military used DDT during the war to prevent disease in our soldiers. The use of DDT nearly eliminated the disease typhus in many parts of Europe. And in 1955, the US employed anti-malaria programs and widely used DDT in the US and Europe. So DDT was initially used with great success to combat malaria, typhus, and the other insect-borne or transmitted human diseases. Now, in 1962, author Rachel Carson came out with her book, Silent Spring, which talked about the disastrous effect of DDT upon wildlife and pretty much blamed environmental destruction on pesticides such as DDT. Silent Spring, the title of the book, meaning spring would be silent because all the birds would be killed by our use of DDT, since the birds would not be singing. She also claimed that there was a link between DDT and the significantly reduced populations of the bald eagle. And the eagles that had ingested the DDT were found to lay eggs with thinning eggshells. And these unhealthy diseased shells would not allow many eaglets to survive and thrive. And thus, Carson states that accounted for the plummeting eagle population. Well, this book started freaking people out about DDT, right? DDT is destroying nature, fish, our wildlife, birds. We're going to have spring with no singing birds around. DDT is harming humans. And pretty much because of these claims in the book, the environmental movement was born and triggered the formation of the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. That was in 1970. And guess what? One of the first acts of the Environmental Protection Agency was to ban DDT. So in 1972, DDT was banned in the United States and in many other countries as well, but it's still used in some developing countries. Now, this DDT ban set in motion a major controversy. On the one hand, you got those who thought that DDT was absolutely essential because it helped fight off diseases in people, it saved many lives, and this ban would be a death sentence to millions of people. And on the other hand, you have those who thought that banning DDT was the right thing because it was hurting the environment and possibly toxic to people as well. And I'll tell you, 48 years later, after DDT was banned, it's still a controversial topic, especially when other mosquito-borne or transmitted illnesses pop up in the United States, like West Nile virus, which spread across the United States pretty quickly after the first reported case, which was in Queens, New York in 1999. And we're still dealing with the West Nile virus. I'm here in California. I could just go to the California West Nile virus website. It's updated, I believe, every few days, and it shows West Nile virus activity in what counties in California are affected and how many cases there are. And then we had a Zika virus scare. Remember that? The first outbreak of Zika virus was in Florida in 2016. So although malaria is not a concern for us here in the United States, we are concerned about other mosquito-borne and transmitted diseases. One of the outspoken individuals who opposed the DDT ban was Dr. Jane Orient. Dr. Jane Orient is executive director of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons and president of Doctors for Disaster Preparedness. She asserts, back in 2016, that a lifting of the ban on DDT could prevent the spread of the Zika virus, just as it could have wiped out malaria. Dr. Orient calls the DDT ban a, quote, disastrous decision, and claims DDT was the most effective public health weapon of all time. She believes you need effective mosquito control to combat these mosquito-transmitted diseases. Dr. Orient attributes the 1972 DDT ban to environmental hysteria triggered by events like Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring. She says the author, Carson, is not a scientist and created a very scary scenario in her book. She says the book was filled with lies and presented flawed and inaccurate evidence that DDT was harmful to the environment and to humans. Dr. Orient says that the pesticide DDT has never been proven to be harmful to humans, and it does not cause Alzheimer's or cancer as the book or many would claim it did. She also says the evidence showing DDT was thinning bald eagles' eggshells was flawed. The environmentalists and supporters of the ban would claim that DDT was killing off the peregrine falcon and caused it to be a threatened species. But Dr. Orient argued that that simply wasn't true. The peregrine falcon was threatened because people were shooting them. The book claims that because of DDT, the robin was, quote, on the verge of extinction. Well, some argued that Carson ignored the Audubon Society's annual bird count, which showed that there was no fewer birds in the years prior to her writing her book. Dr. Orient states that DDT was credited with saving 500 million or 500 million human lives, and it was the most effective weapon against malaria ever because it directly targets and kills the carrier of the disease, the mosquitoes. And in a 2016 interview, she said, because of this ban, quote, African babies are dying by the millions. So it's interesting, and you can see how it makes for a really hot political public health debate. Anyway, August 20th is World Mosquito Day, which is a commemoration of Sir Ronald Ross's discovery in 1897 that mosquitoes transmit malaria.